Spurgeon 261, the call of Abraham. By faith Abraham went out. He was called to go to a place of inheritance, and he obeyed. He went out, not knowing where he was to go to. Abraham's faith was a most high one, for he is called the father of the faithful. Nothing but repeated and terrible trials could have trained his faith to be as strong as it was when he prepared to slay his son at the command of God. Before that incident, he had been long tried and tempered before his faith was brought to its marvelous edge. People do not come to full stature except by years of growth. Stars are not instantly high in the heavens, nor the sun. Each must climb incrementally to their peak. And so with people it is true that trials are the disturbing winds that root the tree of faith. They are the trainers that drill God's young soldiers, and teach their hands to war and their fingers to fight. One of Abraham's principal trials was being called away to a land where he had never been. Similarly, let us consider this, knowing that it may be our trial also. Let us consider Abraham specifically. His family members were originally idol worshippers. Later, after God's light had come, they became God's worshippers, but there was a lot of ignorance and a remnant of their old ways mingled with their worship. God had always singled out Abraham to be his chosen servant and the father of his chosen people on earth, and he made Abraham leave his home and the comfort of friends and family, to journey to the land of Canaan, which he promised later to give him for an inheritance. Let's think about what Abraham left, and then where he went, for his trial includes both of those things. He had to leave behind his own father, all the associations of his youth, his household and family and native country. To a patriot, that is no small thing. Many a person has felt keenly enough the separation from home and kindred, and next to that, the sad banishment from their native land. Besides, we can consider with what inconvenience Abraham must have removed. He had a considerable property in flocks and herds, and probably had the ancestral dwelling house in which to reside. He had to leave all these, and he also had to leave the fair pastures where his flocks and his father's flocks had been fed, and he must make his way into the wilderness. He must give up all agricultural pursuits, renounce his vine and his fig tree, and go his way, not knowing where, to a land which to him was as unknown as the valley of the shadow of death. If you have had to part from those you loved, and had your hearts torn from loved ones when moving away, then you can sympathize somewhat with Abraham's trial when he left home and family, and country, and all, to go forth into an unknown land. This is the place from which he went. Now, let us look to the place where he went. When people emigrate, they wish to know the nature of the country in which they are to live. For example, is it to be a richer country than their own? While they may leave reluctantly, it may be, after they have settled there a little while, that their mother country is almost forgotten, and they find a settled dwelling place in their adopted land. But Abraham didn't know of the country to which he was about to move. He had simply God's promise that it should be his inheritance. It was, it might be said, a wild goose chase, and the scornful might deride it as a mad and idle dream. Perhaps his prudent father cautioned him to avoid so great a risk, and maybe an anxious mother asked him to consider that, as a bird wanders from the nest, so as one who leaves their home. But against all these considerations, Abraham was wisest, for he put aside all worldly maxims, he set the principle above the generalization, and considered the promise more precious than the proverb. It spoke well for Abraham that he seems to have understood that humankind's wisdom is often simply ignorance wearing nice clothes. Someone said that when Christ rode into Jerusalem, he came riding upon a donkey, but when the enemy came into paradise, he came in the shape of a wise creature, a subtle serpent. So, wisdom came riding upon the brute and stupid, but folly came wearing the finery of craftiness. We shall often find it so in our lives. Simple things, such as plain simple obedience, for example, are close cousins to wise counsel, and the person that knows a principle doesn't need to be afraid that acting in obedience to it is a poor choice. So Abraham went, though he knew not where. Some may have reminded him, the journey is a long one, or the end will be doleful and tragic. But Abraham may have responded by saying, "It might be disappointing to my personal ambition, but not to my faith in God. I believe that he will be with me and take me where he would like, and I won't lack any good thing." So Abraham did indeed go on his lonely and weary journey, but God did not desert him, but graciously provided for him. Now we have talked about what Abraham left and where he went. Let's look at the manner in which he went. God commanded and Abraham obeyed, just as the thunder follows the flash of lightning when the storm is near. So, when faith is near, the thunder of our obedience follows the mighty flash of God's influence in our hearts. If God bids us do something, we should do it at once. Abraham went without any hesitation or excuse. No, he was commanded to go, and he went without hesitation. There were no fleshly-centered arguments between God and Abraham, for God has not invited his people to reason with him with human arguments. He has invited sinners to do so. "Come now and let us reason together," he has said. When men have no faith, God invites them to reason, but when they have faith, reasoning with God becomes a sin. Abraham asked no question. He was not like Moses. He did not say, "Who am I that thou would send me?" But when he was commanded to go, he went and he followed God without hesitation. Please continue the essay on the next part.